Today, we, members of All Progressive Congress, will not forget Ogbonna in a hurry. Ogbonna was the architect of APC. I want to put it on record that it was Ogbonna's letter as the chairman of AMPP to the then chairman of CPC, chairman of AC, that eventually gave rise to what is today known as APC. So Ogbonna is the father of this APC that we're talking about. He initiated it. It was his idea. It was after Ogbonna fired that first letter to Chief Bisi Akande and Chief Tony Momo of the blessed memory that those two political parties with MPP now set up a committee in what was then known as the merger committee, where I also played a very prominent role as a member of the merger committee of the of the APC. Mr. President, Ogbonna's last outing, public outing, was at Ibu Square, when he cried for justice, when he cried for equity, when he cried for the unity of this country. It can only be a man like Ogbonna that can do that. I want to refer to what happened in Kaduna in 1991, when Ogbonna won as a presidential candidate of APP. But he was requested, they pleaded with him to drop that ambition for an election he has already won. But for the unity of this country, Ogbonna dropped it. And Olufalaye became the presidential flag bearer of MPP and contested with President Obasanjo that defeated Olufalaye. So the point I'm making is that Ogbonna lived a life of sacrifice all through his life. He sacrificed for the nation. He sacrificed for the Igbo race. He sacrificed for all the political parties that he belonged to. So I want to thank the mover of this motion, and I want to request that the federal government of Nigeria, as one of the prayers in this motion, should find a befitting edifice to immortalize Ogbonna's name. May his soul rest in perfect peace.
Just too many people want to contribute. We will just make it very short. The next person is new Senator Abamoro.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. It is indeed an honor to pay tribute to Dr. Ogbonna Onu, who has come across to me as a perfect gentleman, a pious family person, imbued with humility and a great sense of responsibility. Mr. President, like water, Ogbonna Onu didn't have an enemy. It was with great surprise and shock that I heard about the death of Dr. Ogbonna Onu. My last contact with Ogbonna Onu was via a text message when he sent to congratulate me as the minority leader, and with a promise that he will come to see me whenever he will come to Abuja, and I acknowledge that message. Mr. President, I think, like my colleagues have said, Ogbonna Onu has contributed immensely to the development of Nigeria, and in the process made a lot of sacrifices, like many Nigerians may not likely do. And so today, we have lost a very great patriot, a nationalist, and a gentleman to the core. Our prayers, my prayers, are with the family at this moment of grief, and I pray to God Almighty that He grants the family and friends and relatives the fortitude to bear this irreparable an irreplaceable loss. I wish that God grants him a place in his kingdom for eternal rest. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, distinguished minority leader. Let us have distinguished Senator Wamako.
Mr. President, Aliyu Yam Wamako remains my name. For who to knows. Mr. President, I rise to aid my voice with this very important motion on the demise of our dear friend and brother, Dr. Obania Ono. Mr. President, much has been said and can still be said about Governor Obania Ono. What today or next tomorrow, without finishing, mentioning his virtues, his qualities, and what he's stood for. What else? He was a true Nigerian of the nation, with various capacities, and with commitment and sincerity. Mr. President, I worked with him for some 30 years or more in different positions, and we're very close with him. And it's somebody I truly respect, somebody who deserves whatever qualification, whatever good thing wants to say about Obania Obano, maybe he even deserves more. As a friend, that's one thing I must recall about him. In the last dispensation when he was a minister, the entire PC government was people we came with, we worked with in the formation of that government. But he was a first minister who took his phone and called me, Wamako, where are you? So I'm a secretary, please give me a level 8 officer for appointment into my ministry. I feel humble. I feel so honored. He could have called somebody in Bakalaki or Mahia or somewhere else, but he called somebody and to give him a level 8 officer for appointment into my ministry. That single act to me means that goes to confirm the kind of person Obania always, the kind of gentleman, the kind of Nigerian the guy was in his lifetime. So I join all the good things that was said about him and the praise for his soul. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you for the brevity of your speech. Distinguished Senator Avaribe.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Engineer Baribe, and I represent Abia South. And like my former governor and colleague, Ojuzo Kalu, has said, Bunoyano was the first civilian governor after the military in Abia State when it was created. So many things have been said by our colleagues, and I fully endorse everything that they have said. And I just want to make 2 points. The first one is to remind us of the poem by Henry Longfellow, that lives of great men remind us to make our lives sublime, so that when departing, leave behind us footprints in the sands of time. I think Obuneano has left footprints in the sands of time. Secondly, to remind Nigerians and all my colleagues to recall the words of Obuneano, the last outing at the convention of the All Progressive Congress, where he asked a very great question: where is the justice? May his soul rest in peace. Amen.
Distinguished Senator Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. President, and my dear distinguished colleagues. Henry Serake Dixon, and I represent Bayelsa West. Mr. President, I'd like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to say a few words to add to the deluge of wonderful statements of tribute on this occasion of the passing of one of our finest politicians and leaders in this country, in this generation. Mr. President, like most of us, I didn't know of any ill health. I had not heard about it, so I was shocked when I got the news of the passing of this wonderful statesman. It is clear, even from the comments so far, that whereas this deserving motion has been brought by the senator from Ebonyi State, and rightly so, this motion has the bipartisan and unanimous support of all of us in this chamber. But I would like to just make one or two statements to add to all that my colleagues have said. Mr. President and members of the chambers, Ogbonnaya honors public life, and it's verifiable. He lived a life of honor and integrity, a life of service. As governor of Abia State, he did so very well until the military truncated that regime. And Ogbonnaya honor at the formation, at the beginning of our democratic exercise. In 1998, at that time I was state chairman of the Alliance for Democracy, and later became the national legal advisor of the Alliance for Democracy. And he was our joint, he gave up his mandate. He had been elected as the presidential flag bearer of the APP, properly elected, because everyone believed in his capacity to lead this country. But following the discussions and the merger, when we were, as younger people, following the elders, we saw what happened. Once the merger discussions were finalized, the merger between the Alliance for Democracy and the APP at that time, Ogbonnaya Ono did a historic sacrifice for democracy. When this nation, because of the need to address the injustices emanating from the cancellation or the annulment of the Abiola's mandate, political leadership of this country decided for national stability to look at the Southwest to commence the process of stabilizing our democracy. Ogbonnaya Ono, in recognition of that, made one of the greatest political sacrifices a politician can ever make in his career. Gave up voluntarily his presidential mandate that was validly given and allowed the alliance to now nominate our candidate at the time, our joint candidate at the time, in person of Chief Olufalaye, who's still alive. He did that. And that struck some of us, the younger generation, even at that time. When the elders mooted it, we were wondering, can they pull this through? Can a politician who has fought hard, built bridges, eminently qualified as any other one of his generation, can he live up that mandate? But Ogbonaya Ono made that historic sacrifice. And I do not think, Mr. President, that in his lifetime, Ogbonaya Ono was appropriately or as much honored as he deserved. And I also want to recall the efforts he made with his colleagues to set up an opposition party, which is now the current ruling party, to challenge our party. He, together with former President Buhari, current President Tinubu, then Ogbonaya Ono, in whose honor we are now discussing, and people like John Oyegun, Bisi Akonde, and others were very consistent in showing all of us the need for consistency and patriotism. So, Mr. President, on this occasion of his passing, I join in condoling the entire nation, but also the people of Ebonyi State and his family at his passing, and commend to all of us, political leaders, to learn from his life of patriotism and consistency and sacrifice. May a gentle soul rest in peace, and may this country continue to produce great statesmen like Ogbonaya Ono. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. You notice that you spoke more than the time allocated. The reason is that you are speaking on behalf of the whole South and a John nation. Yeah, so let's listen to distinguished Senator Mongunu.
Distinguished Senate President, distinguished senators, my name is Mohamed Tahir Monguno. I represent Borno North Senatorial District. Mr. President, distinguished senators, I'm going to give tribute to the late Ogbonaya Ono because of my close association with him as a member of the defunct All Progressive Party, and then subsequently as a member of the All Nigeria People's Party. In the course of my membership of these two defunct parties, I was privileged to have worked with him in various capacities, and I have closely observed that as a national chairman, he not only preached the gospel of internal democracy in political parties that has eluded some parties to the extent of instituting the culture of internal democracy in the All Nigerian People's Party when he was the national chairman. To that extent, he is a true Democrat that preaches the gospel of democracy in all its ramifications. And one thing that has endeared me to him, as rightly observed by Senator Sarake Dixon, is the fact that he let the fact that opposition parties need to coalesce into a single force with a view to wresting power from the People's Democratic Party that was in government. As a result of that fact, opposition political parties came together and were able to wrestle power from the People's Democratic Party, a feat that is thought can never be achieved. And as a result of that effort, today we are in government. This great feat should also be attributed to him because he's one of those that championed and preach that cause that today the opposition party is in government. And Mr. President, distinguished senators, in life there is time to be born and there is time to die. In between is the time to serve. Late Ogbonaya Onu came, he was born, and today he is no more, but in between he has served humanity to the glory of God and mankind. May his soul rest in perfect peace.
Amen. Distinguished Senator Goje.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am Mohammed Andrew Mokoje, representing the Central Member State. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I stand to join others who have spoken in paying tribute to a great Nigerian, great politician, great patriot. I never knew him on face-to-face basis until 2013, when we were discussing the formation of APC. Most speakers limited their talk to CPC, ACM, AMPP, and some even put ABGA, but they never mentioned a substantial faction of the PDP. I belong to that faction of the PDP that pulled out from PDP to team up with the other parties to form APC, which is now the ruling party. So we cannot say only opposition party. Even part the ruling party pull out. Whatever it we call as we pull out, we are PDP and we pull out from the PDP from this chamber, and we also join the other four groups to form the APC. His role in forming that party, APC, was commendable. He was the leader of the AMP group, and was series of meetings with him. And as a gentleman, whenever he stood out to speak, people listened attentively because he hardly spoke. And when he spoke to the point. And in most cases, what he suggested always was carried by the meeting. Mr. President, a lot has been said about this gentleman. But one thing I want to say is that he behaved far more than his age. I thought he was born in the early 40s. I thought he was much older than myself, but he was just only 1 year older than me. But by his behavior, he had always behaved as a gentleman, as an elder, as a leader. And I think that's why this Hallowed chamber, and everybody wants to speak. Everybody wants to speak in his favor because he deserves that. Not many people will get kind of accolades across the country. So whatever we say about him, the good thing we say about him, he deserves more than that. Somebody raised a point, and I want to concur also. Given the role he played, one, in 1999, why he stepped down for Olufalaye, which is very rare for any politician in this world to get a presidential ticket in a very big party. In fact, that time there are only two parties, NRC and really PDP and APP. For somebody to step down from that, it was very close to the presidency, very close, and then he stepped down without any complaint. Up to date, nobody can quote him or say anything bad about that alliance. It's very rare to we the politicians, and he did that. And also, in 2015, when we won the election, I want to say you should have been compensated higher than what you got something better than what you got as a mayor minister of science and technology. But he never complained. He worked closely with the government up to the end and continued to serve the APC up to his death. So on this score, I think whatever accolade we give him, he deserves that. May he. So I want to extend my condolence to the members of his family, the people and government of Ebonyi State and Nigerians at large. May his soul rest in peace. Thank you very much.
Distinguished Senator Ndume.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I'm Senator Mohamed Adin Dume, representing Borno South. Our colleagues have spoken. Just want to add my simple voice to it. Because God says, the voice of the people is his voice. Obone Onu was a very good man, very gentle man. As the previous colleagues said, he was our national chairman of the ANPP, and he led the ANPP into alliance. He's one of the few Nigerians that I've known, I've seen, I've interacted with, that sacrifices or sacrificed his personal interests for national interests. That was clearly exhibited, as Senator Goji said, when he agreed to step down. When Nigerians are desperate to get PDP out, he stood down in the interest of the nation so that we will have a better alliance that will be able to match. As I said, he was a complete gentleman. He was our national chairman when I decamped to PDP on sabbatical. He tried to keep me in ANPP then. But my people called on me to come and serve as a senator. He did everything to reconcile between me and my governor then. At the end of it, in my absence, he negotiated with my governor to allow me to contest for House of Rep. I was almost buying into it, but our people insisted that I should contest for the Senate. As at that time, we had no councillor in Borno State. PDP had no councillor in Borno State. Then I went back to him and told him that I would be willing to go back to the House, but my people want me to be in the Senate. It was then he reminded me of the word I started, that the voice of the people is the voice of God. Follow what your people say. He was a very strong Christian. And he said, though you are a Muslim, I want to pray for you. And he prayed for me in his office. And he said, go, you will prevail, because God will be with you. And I won. I came back to him to thank him for his fatherly advice. And he told me one thing, that he is not comfortable with ANPP anymore because injustice has invaded the ANPP. But he has a feeling that he will conduct the burial ceremony of ANPP. And that was what happened. May his gentle soul rest in peace, and may we learn a lesson from what we are doing today. Do good, and good will follow you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Distinguished Senator Webber. You may be seated.
Let's sit down, sir.
Yes, dismissed Senator Webby.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for this opportunity to join my colleagues to pay tribute to our elder statesman, Dr. Obunaya Onu late. Dr. Obunaya Onu, as we all know him, Your Excellency, was both a good man and a good citizen. As a good man, Your Excellency, Dr. Obunaya Onu was kind and loving to all manner of men. As a good citizen, he has made his notable contribution towards the development of our country and Abia State in particular, having served as a pioneer governor of Abia State. And he laid a formidable foundation for the development of Abia State. Your Excellency, having said this, it is therefore our prayer, jointly and severally, that the good Lord will forgive his shortcomings and grant him eternal rest. Amen.
Thank you. Distinguished Deputy Senate President.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand to pay tribute to a man of honor, a man of integrity, and a man who was very, very humble throughout his lifetime. He was a governor, and later, after passing through various offices he occupied, he became a chairman of a very big opposition party. Yet he was very, very humble. I interacted with him when he was chairman of AMPP, which I belong, and you could see a man that was unassuming. When you didn't know him and you came across him somewhere, you wouldn't know that he was a chairman of a party, a former governor. You wouldn't know. And because of his integrity, his virtue of integrity, he made sure there was internet democracy in MPP. There wasn't anything like opposition in MPP. And he did very well to key into the project that was initiated by the current president of this country, Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu, that of creating the APC, because he initiated the process of the formation of APC. And when I was a chairman of APC and other leaders key into that, he initiated it over, when I think he initiated it together, then later brought in Buhari and former president and other leaders were all invited to join that the project that is now the party, the ruling party of this country. He key into it, and he was one of those chairmen that willingly led their parties to dissolve those parties at that time, the legacy parties, to form the APC. He was the last chairman of the AMP. When the process was on, he showed that he was willing to be part of the making of history of forming a party then, of course, the APC, that was able to wrestle power democratically away from the ruling party, which was a first in history. So he was part of that history, and he played a very, very good role. Mr. President, it will take hours to fully pay the necessary tribute by myself on this patriot, the man who lived a life of service to our nation, a man who was an epitome of humility, an epitome of credibility, an epitome of integrity. But there's no time. So I will just at this juncture pray or extend my condolences to his immediate family, to the people of Ebonyi State, and to the APC family, and to former members of the defunct AMPP, which I belong, and the entire nation. And I pray, finally, that may his soul rest in perfect peace. Thank you, Mr. President.
Distinguished Senator Hanga.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I would like to add my voice to sympathize with his family and his lovers. Dr. Obana Onu was my chairman once I was in the ANPP and I was served as a senator. He was quite a gentleman and an epitome of humility, like the Senior President said. I remember when there was a move to converge, to come together and form the APC. I was the national chairman of the CPC, the party I registered. I had differences with the leader then, General Mahmoud Buhari. They wanted my certificate, the certificate of the party for the coming together with other parties. I was dragging my future religion certificate for such reasons. Uh, Only two of them bothered to come to me. He sent his junior brother, same father, same mother to me, that was making a private visit to me. And before he came, the president came. So Bola Tinubu came to me, whom I knew since SDP. We were together in SDP. He was in the Senate while I was in the House of Reps. So Adu came and leader with me to release the certificate. Blah 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 blah. Something I can't say now. So I said, okay, I'll consider it. When Onu came to me, my house, he was so humble, quite a gentleman. He came to me and pleaded with me to release the certificate. Release for the country, not for anybody. Let's forget about the differences with General Buhari or anybody. The man was so good and gentle. I was so honored and moved that if these two political giants will come to me, I would have no reason to have any more quarrel on this illegal certificate. So I released the certificate. This man was so good, so gentle, so humble that when I released the certificate, he called me to thank me for that and assured me that he will always have his respect. And I really miss him. He was so kind, so humble. And I continue to have a relationship with him even after we parted politically. His junior brother is now our vice chairman of the Northeast. Southeast. Same father, same mother. We are the vice chairman of the NNPP, the seventh vice chairman of the NNPP, the Southwest and Southeast. I really miss him. Nigeria missed as a gentleman. May his soul rest in perfect peace. Thank you, Mr. President.
The distinguished Senator Hanga, which certificate of which party?
Sir?
Certificate of which party did you release? Huh?
CPC.
Okay, you were in custody of the certificate.
I registered it and I was in custody for the certificate. I had quarrel with them. So when they came for this merger, I refused to release the certificate. And one of the conditions for this merger was certificate. And I said, no way, I will not release it. After all, I suffered to register the party. Nobody helped me. I went up and down to register it. I went all around the country to organize and register it. And the merger was shaky.
the President Ahmed was actually whom I knew through SDP. We were in SDP together, we were in the same graduate camp together, we knew each other. And when I had problem with the ANPP, I joined the uh, AC, where I, 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 I was a gubernatorial candidate in my state. So we knew each other very well. He came to me, he didn't ascend for me. You see how humble that man too can be. I was his boy. He came to me and pleaded with me. And the same thing of Bonner, he came to me. So I released the certificate. I said, and I said it that I will do it for Nigeria, not for anybody, so that these people will not think I just release it for anything. I release it for these two gentlemen. Thank you very much, sir. Let me thank my colleagues for all their contributions on the demise of this great man, Sir Obonoya Onu. Yes, some of us had to repeat. Some of us had to repeat ourselves over and over, but I allowed it because I know that this is one death that has touched almost all families in the country. If we did not listen to the civil Senator Hanga, we wouldn't even have known that but for him there would have been no APC today. The simplicity of Obonaya Onu, his humble disposition, appealed to your conscience, and you then release the certificate of CPC for the merger to take place that has formed the mega party that we have today, the All Progressives Congress. So I also had a personal interaction with Obonaya Onu when I was a minister in the last administration. And he was a minister in charge of science and technology. He was very innovative. He was very simple, always smiling. I don't think the man in his lifetime had any enemy because he was friendly to all and always ready to concede and sacrifice for the good of the nation. So I want to thank all of us who have extolled his virtues today and paid tribute to the name of this great man, and pray to Almighty God to console his family and also give us more of the Obonaya Odos in this country, so that this country will continue to remain together. Thank you for your contributions. May we now quickly run into the prayers. Senator Idiot, I noticed if I stand up now, you will say that no woman spoke.
Yes, sir.
And so
I come under order 42, sir.
Let us finish with Senator Bonaya Onu.
Still on Senator Dr. Bonaya Onu, sir.
Okay.
This tribute will not be incomplete if we have nobody from the Southwest contributing to this tribute for Dr. Bonaya Onu. On this note, I crave your indulgence to please allow Senator Shuaib from Ogun to speak for Southwest. Thank you, sir.
I mean, the Senate of the Southwest or Senate of Nigeria.
Senator of Nigeria.
No,
but
no,
as you can see, Your Excellency,
it is the Senate of
virtually,
Nigeria that is paying tribute to Obonaya Onu, not the Senate of Southwest. But because of you being the Senate is gender friendly, read Order 42. Let me hear what you said.
with the indulgence of the Senate and the leave of the President of the Senate, the Senator may make a personal explanation, although there be no question before the Senate. But no controversial matter may be brought forward, nor may debate arise upon the explanation. The terms of the proposed statement shall be submitted, in details to the President of the Senate on his leave to make it his thought. I therefore crave your indulgence to please allow somebody from the Southwest to contribute to this tribute for it to be, for us to have a complete tribute from the Senate.
Well, your point of order is unfair.
Thank you, sir.
Distinguished Senator Tribal, you may now speak on behalf of the Southwest Senators.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Shoaib Afolabi Salisu. I represent Ogun Central in Ogun State, Southwest Nigeria. You may be wondering why is a tribute in honor of Dr. Ogbonna Ayu that important to Southwest? Every major achievement of this late great Nigerian has been related to Southwest. What I think you talk about is prodigious intellect being identified. It was at the University of Lagos he made first class in chemical engineering in Southwest. If you speak about stepping down to form a party, a ticket of national unity with Olufalaye, it was about Southwest. If you also talk about the APC, the merger of CPC, ACN, and AMPP, it also has everything to do with Southwest. Indeed, Dr. Ogbonna Anoya Onukulaswe come from Southwest Nigeria, and therefore, we also want to stand up to lend our voice. What we are celebrating today is not the transition of an individual, a great Nigerian, someone of great intellect. No. What we are celebrating is more than the transition of an individual. We are celebrating at least three things. And it is important to emphasize this, particularly that we have students from two schools over there in the gallery watching us pay tribute to a Nigerian. We need to let them know, number one, that at a time people are beating drums of discord, dissension, and disunity, the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is celebrating someone for its being a bridge builder. And it's important to emphasize that. Either from Northeast, Northwest, South-South, Southwest, we are celebrating somebody who's a bridge builder. And it is important for Nigerian youth to understand that at this point in our national history, we need more of Dr. Ogbonna Ayu. Number two, Mr. President, this man made a first class in chemical engineering. Sometimes you look at the people in the political class and wonder whether they go to school at all. It does mean that regardless of what you have achieved in your profession, you could also bring that into the political space. The man we are celebrating today is a symbol that of professionals in politics, and we must continue. No nation, the politics of a nation cannot rise beyond the politics of those who are participants. Every attribute, every encomium we have placed, rightly so, on this man was largely because he was also a man that was cosmopolitan. He had the best education from the best university in a different part of the country. The final one, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, it's also the fact that no one here has spoken about the quantum of money demand made. We are not celebrating material things. It does mean you can make great sacrifices and contributions, even your bank account is very lean. These are the reasons why the people of Southwest want to commiserate with the people of Ebonyi State, the government, its family, and the political class, that we have lost a gem, we have lost a man of prodigious intellect, we have lost a bridge builder, we have lost a symbol of professionals in politics, and we have also demonstrated that it's not all about materialism, that can make sacrifices, you can make contributions to the growth of this country. No one here, whether from PDP, AMPP, APP, AC, ASN, or APC, has said anything except those things that are very, very ennobling about this man. The loss is not just for Ebonyi State, it's not just for political class. Nigeria has lost its finance. May God console his family, his associates, and the people of Ebonyi. And of course, may we all derive lessons and insight from the life of this great man. So I so submit on behalf of Nigerian senators from Southwest.
Well, I think, yeah, Senator Idiad, I must thank you because his speech has justified your point of order. Sars, thank you. You have encapsulated all that we should have said about this great man. Thank you. In addition, I want to thank Senator Antoniani for bringing this motion and bringing this to the fore of all Nigerians. Particularly what you said last, that the youths have a lot to learn from the life of Senator Bonaya. It's not about wealth, it's not about fat bank accounts, but about a life of integrity, a life of patriotism, a life of service to your nation, and a life of sacrifice, even in the face of perceived political injustice. So I thank you. So, distinguished colleagues, let us go straight into the prayers. Prayer 1, observe a minute silence in his honor. Those in support of prayer 1 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 2, urge the federal government of Nigeria to immortalize his name. Those in favor of prayer 2 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 3, send a delegation to condole with the family, the government, and the good people of Ebonyi State and the Southeast in general. Those in favor of prayer 3 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. May we now rise to observe in silence in honor of this great man. May the soul of His Excellency, the first class scholar, the consummate politician, the great leader, the great man of peace, upon our rest in peace. In line with prayer 3, we have a seven-man committee that will visit the family of late His Excellency Obonaya Onu to condole on behalf of this Senate with the family and the good people of Ebonyi State. Distinguished Senator Ashiru Oyerola Yesa will be the chairman from Southwest in view of what from North Central. Well, Ashiru will lead the delegation. Senator Baboro will be a member of the committee. Senator Baribe will be there. Senator Dixon will join the delegation. And the last speaker from Southwest, Senator Sarisi Afolabi will be there. Distinguished Senator Iveti Kingibe will be there. And of course, Distinguished Senator Abi Alaji over here. The mover of the motion will direct accordingly and receive the delegation. Direct them to the family and also to the governor of the state. And of course, this should be done within the next 1 week. Leader of the Senate.
Your Excellency, the Senate President, the first business of the day is presentation of a bill standing in the name of Senator Barau Jibrin on Renewable Energy Bill 2024 SB 431. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, Renewable Energy Bill 2024, SB 431, first reading.
Distinguished colleagues, Renewable Energy Bill 2024 SB 431, first reading taken. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, the second business of the day is presentation of a bill standing in the name of Senator Bani Buhari on Federal Institute of Vision and Optical Research, ENIMA, by Igbema, Indoni River State, Establishment Bill 2024 SB 304. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, Federal Institute of Vision and Optical Research, ENEMA, Oba Egbemandoni River State Establishment Bill 2024, SB 304, first reading.
Distinguished colleagues, Federal Institute of Vision and Optical Research, ENEMA, Ogba Egbema Ndoni, River State Establishment Bill 2024, SB 304, first reading taken. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the third business of the day is presentation of bill standing in the name of Senator Dixon Seriaka Henry on Federal College of Education, Ikirimo, Bayelsa State, Establishment Bill 2024 SB 427. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, Federal College of Education, Ekirimo, Bayelsa State Establishment Bill 2024, SB 427, first reading.
Distinguished colleagues, Federal College of Education, Ekirimo, Bayelsa State Establishment Bill 2024, SB 428, first reading taken. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. Senate President, distinguished colleagues, the fourth business of the day is presentation of bill standing in the name of Senator Zam Titus Tatenga on sickle cell anemia Prevention, Control, and Management Bill 2024 SB 428. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, Sickle Cell Anemia Prevention, Control and Management Bill 2024, SB 428, first reading.
Distinguished colleagues, Sickle Cell Anemia Prevention, Control and Management Bill 2024, SB 428, first reading taken. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the fifth business of the day is presentation of bill standing in the name of Senator Ntume Mohammed Ali on the unemployed youth, elderly, and indigent sustainability allowance trust fund establishment bill 2024 SB 429. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, Unemployed Youth, Elderly and Indigent Sustainability Allowances Trust Fund Establishment Bill 2024, SB 429, first reading.
Distinguished colleagues, Unemployed Youth, Elderly and Indigent Sustainability Allowances Trust Fund Establishment Bill 2024, SB 429, first reading taken. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, the sixth business of the day is the presentation of bill standing in the name of Senator Adebule Idiat Oluranti on the Sheriffs and Civil Process Act, Amendment Bill 2024, SB 432. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, Sheriffs and Civil Process Act Amendment Bill 2024, SB 432, first reading.
Distinguished colleagues, Sheriffs and Civil Process Act Amendment Bill 2024, SB 432, first reading taken.
Point of order, Mr. President.
Yes, point of order. Other words.
Mr. President, I rise under Order 41, 1 and 2. And with your kind indulgence, I want to read the order, sir.
Please proceed.
The matter for discussion shall, if possible, be referred to the President of the Senate before commencement of the day's sitting, and the President of the Senate shall refuse to allow the claim unless he is satisfied that the matter is definite and urgent. 2, if the claim is allowed by the President of the Senate and the leave of the Senate is given by at least 1/5 of all the senators, the matter shall stand over till the next legislative day. Mr. President, I crave your indulgence to bring to the knowledge of the Senate the carnage and mindless killing of my people a few days ago at Nimbo in Uzuwan local government. And with the kind indulgence of the President and my distinguished colleagues, I want to move this motion, Mr. President. The motion is sponsored by Ezra Okechukwu and co-sponsored by Senators Osita Ngu and Senator Chuku Kevin.
Distinguished colleagues, the Senator Ezia has mentioned to me the unfortunate tragedy that befell his community as a result of attacks by terrorists. Is it the duty of the Senate that he be allowed to bring this matter up on the next legislative day? Those in support say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. You may bring it up on the next legislative date. We have passed this stage. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, the first order of the day, the second reading of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigerian Act, Amendment Bill 2024, SB 265. Distinguished senators will recall that the bill was read for the first time in this chamber on Thursday, 16 November 2023. Mr. President, you may wish to invite Senator Adiola Solomon Olamidekon to move the motion for the bill to be read a second time.
Senator Adiola Olamidekon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Very distinguished colleague, Adiola Solomon Olamidekon, representing Ogun West Senatorial District in the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Mr. President, very distinguished colleague, I move for the lead debate on a bill for an act to amend the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, ICANN, Act Cap 15, 1965, and for other related matter 2023 SB 265. Mr. President, distinguished colleague, as a proud member of this great institute of ICANN, I am happy to lead this debate, as what the institute tends to achieve is to amend its existing act of parliament, Cap 15 of 1965. Mr. President, distinguished colleague, permit me to lead the debate on this important bill for the amendment of the ICANN Act. The bill was read for the first time on Thursday, November 16, 2023. Background. The ICANN Act came into effect on September 1st, 1965, some 59 years ago. The Act empowered the Institute to set standards and regulate the practice of accountancy in Nigeria, in line with the dynamics of the environment, development in the economy, and changing the needs of chartered accountants over the years. It has become imperative to amend certain provisions of this Act, as well as insert new provisions to bring the Act up to current realities and ensure that ICANN remains adaptive, forward-thinking, and attuned to the needs of the nation. Mr. President, distinguished colleague, a total of 26 amendments / insertion are contained in the proposed amendment of the Act, affecting sections and subsections of the Act, as well as the schedule of the Act as set forth below, with rationale to guide the debate and allow its passage for second reading. There is a need to situate accounting practice to encompass developments since 1965 and to bring the practice to what obtained in other jurisdictions. Hence, the need to amend the Section 1, Section 14, Section 19, and inserting a new Section 15, all of which deals with the issues of accounting practice and all areas that a chartered accountant is entitled to practice under the Act. Mr. President, distinguished colleague, corporate governance of modern professional accountancy organization has evolved. Hence, the need to amend part of Section 2, 3, and 6, and inserting a new 24 to 26. For instance, Section 3 of the Act is proposed for an amendment because the Council of ICANN started off with a 25-member structure in 1965, when membership was just 250 members. The number has increased to 25,000 subsequently in accordance with the provision of the Act. With membership strength of over 53,000 today, the need to increase the membership of council to 36 has become compelling. Additionally, the amendment aimed to strengthen ICANN collaboration with other professional bodies and regulatory authorities, both at home and abroad. Such collaboration will foster synergy, knowledge exchange, and harmonization of the standard, guaranteeing that Nigerian chartered accountants remain at par with global best practices and their global counterparts. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, there is a need to enhance the capacity of the Institute to carry out its mandate in the area of regulation and compliance, and this has necessitated the need to amend Section 7, 8, 11, 12, 16, 18, 20, and 21. A glaring example for the amendment is Section 18.5 in the 59-year-old Act. A proven infraction on summary conviction of any of the offenses attracted a paltry 100 naira fine, while a conviction on indictment attract only a fine of 1,000. You will agree with me that this sanction for offenses that could lead to a loss of millions or billions of naira is not a deterrent to malpractices. These amendments collectively aim to strengthen the legislative framework, expand the institute structure, and enhance regulatory powers and professional integrity within the accountancy profession, as in other jurisdictions of the world and global best practices. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I urge you to support the passage of this bill for second reading. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I so move.
Distinguished Senator Sani Musa.
Thank you, Mr. President. My distinguished colleagues, my name is Mohammed Sani Musa, representing Niger East Senatorial District. I stand to support this bill to go for the second reading for the fact that chartered accountants are more or less like the custodians of our financial transactions, everything to do with finances. If you don't have the competent hand to handle, a professional to go with it, there will always be some encumbrances. Our financial regulation, both in public and private sector, requires services from such professionals. If we start to display the way it is practiced elsewhere, the issue of transparency, accountability, and prudency will be enacted back into our public life when it comes to financial transactions. And there will be synergy working with other professionals, just as the lead debates mentioned. So I believe that a country like Nigeria now, there is no better time, especially that we are members of so many of the international, we have signed and agreed to so many conventions to do with both money laundering and transactions. There cannot be any foul play in finances when you don't have a very good regulated ICANN. So having a regulated ICANN will check all those abuses, and not like the way it's been operated now. So I believe that these amendments are necessary, and they will also go in line with our fiscal responsibility. Thank you, Mr. President. So I stand to support this bill, and I believe my colleagues will do the same.
Distinguished Senator Dan Kwambo.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Senator Ibrahim Dan Kwambo, representing Gombe North. I also stand to add my voice to this proposed bill and amendment by my dear brother that is presented to us today. I consider this amendment very timely and very apt in view of the timing of the bill itself, that is today about 59, 60 years old. The amendments are meant to strengthen the institute, to empower it to regulate more and to collaborate with other institutions so that the practice of accounting in Nigeria will be better done. And Mr. President, you will agree with me, accounting practice has changed today in view of technology, in view of the number of people, and also the practice itself that requires an update in the bill so that it will be in line with what is obtainable all around the world. The bill basically to enhance the number of representation in the council is to allow for more people to participate in the council, young men, women, and spread all across the country so that there will be more people that will contribute to the development of accounting practice and thoughts in our country. I therefore support this bill and urge my colleagues to second the bill for the second reading, Your Excellency.
The dismissed Senator Venus Yaro.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. My name is Venus Dauda Yaro, FCA, representing Adama South, an equally proud member of this association. I rise to also lend my voice in support of this bill. Any proposal that would improve not only the practice of accountancy, but the running of our professional body will be supported. But, Mr. President, I want to use this opportunity to once again draw attention to infraction of our rules. We are doing the second reading, debating the second reading of a bill, and I'm not sure distinguished senators have been availed copies of the bill. I raised these points sometimes in the past, specifically when we were debating I think the FCT budget. And I draw attention to our standing orders, orders 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, which requires bills, even executive bills, to be distributed to senators even before first reading. But I was ruled out of order. How do you debate even the general principles of a bill that has not been circulated? So, Mr. President, I want us to be mindful of our rules and abide by them. Thank you.
Dismissed Senator Mongoro.
Mr. President of the Senate, distinguished senators, my name is Mohamed Tahir Monguno. I represent Borno North Senatorial District. Though most of the previous speakers are members of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, I'm not an accountant. In fact, mathematics is one of the subjects that I so much despise that led me to go and study law. So I am not an accountant, but I think because it's something that concerns law, an amendment of a law, I am eminently qualified to speak on it. Mr. President of the Senate, I think this bill is apt and germane, especially against the backdrop of the various arguments canvassed by the mover of the motion. And one of the arguments that was seriously canvassed by the sponsor of this motion is the need to strengthen the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria in order to perform its regulatory functions without let or hindrance. I think what this bill seeks to do is to make sure that the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria should not be akin to a toothless bulldog that can bark but cannot bite. So there is need to strengthen the arm of the institute in order not only to bark but to bite in the course of the discharge of its mandate. And then one other amendment that the sponsor of this bill seeks to achieve is the issue of bringing the law in tandem with not only international best practice, but in tandem with the objective and subjective realities of what is happening in the profession today. I can see that the law was first enacted in 1965, and even the fine that is given for the breach of some of the provisions of the Act is no longer in tune with realities of today. And laws are supposed to be organic and change with the changing nature of society. So what this bill seeks to do is also to bring some fine that is going to be imposed, for example, of a fine of 1,000 naira. Is so the amount is so little that it will not serve as a deterrence to the breach of the act, especially against the backdrop of the economic realities of today. So what this bill seeks to do is to increase the fine from 100, to increase the fine in order to bring it with realities of today. So as I said earlier, this bill is apt, relevant, and germane, and I urge my colleagues to support the second reading of this bill with the speed of light. Thank you.
Distinguished Senator Abbas Aminu here.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I am Senator Aminu Abbas, FCA, also member of the Institute. I stand to support the amendment of this bill or the law of the Institute, Mr. President. And I'm urging my colleagues to look at it in this way. When this institute was formed, there were only few universities in Nigeria, very few, that even offer accounting practice studies. Today, we have thousands, we have hundreds of institutions, both universities, polytechnics, and colleges of education, that graduate accountants, while the law has not been amended since then. When this law was, as stated by the mover of the sponsor of the bill, there were only 250 members when this law was signed. Today, 53,000 members of the institution, with hundreds of thousands of members as students. of the institution and no up-to-date law that regulates the practice. Mr. President, I stand to plead with the distinguished senators to support this second reading of this bill to enable this bill to be passed as my previous colleague urged the Senate, so that accounting profession will have an up-to-date law to regulate it, so that the finances, more especially the situation we are in Nigeria now, we need this law to be able to bring us out of our financial situation of the country. I therefore support this bill and urge our colleagues to support it to enable it to send the second reading. I so submit.
Is there anybody who is opposed to this bill? If there is nobody, then I would just want us to refer to section order 76 of the Senate Standing Orders as amended. 76. The notice of presentation of a government bill shall be given by publication of the provisions proposed to be embodied in such bill in an issue of the official gazette or National Assembly Journal, of which a copy shall have been sent to every senator. Now, any senator who wishes to move for leave to bring a bill shall give notice of provisions proposed to be embodied in the bill to the clerk. If you intend to move a motion to amend a bill, you must give notice of the provisions to be embodied in the proposal to the clerk, who shall cause those things to be published in 2 successive issues in the official gazette or National Assembly Journal, and shall send a copy of the first of such issues to every senator. Distinguished Senator Olamileko, can you confirm that these copies of these proposals have been sent to every senator?
Mr. President, distinguished colleague, you will recall in my opening remarks on the bill, I said the bill was first read in November 16, 2023. And for me to present the bill or for first reading, that shows the bill has been submitted to the National Assembly for onward transfer to members of this distinguished Senate by the Secretariat. Thank you.
The clerk of the Senate, can you confirm that copies of the it's already an act of parliament, the proposal for amendment have been submitted and distributed to members? Well, the clerk says that a proposed amendment had been distributed earlier to members. Is there anybody who has received it? You have received. Senator Manguru has received. Senator Dankwambo, you received. Abbas, you received. Is there anybody who has not received? 1, 2, 3, about 4 or 5 people. So let's 6, 7. Some people said they have not received. You have not received. Huh? You have received. So, Sunday, you have received. So I'm saying that in respect of the observation by Senator Binus Yaro. So, distinguished Senator, maybe you may wish to ask your staff to check if they have received and they've not yet given it to you, because so many senators have received copies of both the act as well as the proposed amendment before we got to this stage. The clerk, you can repeat the distribution for the purpose of those who have not received. So let me thank all distinguished senators for their contributions to this, and also thank Senator Olamilekong for bringing this up. 59 years of the existence of this Act of Parliament in respect of ICANN and no amendment and nothing. So we need to bring it in line with existing realities. Nobody's even mentioning AI, artificial intelligence. So it's something that we need to bring it in line with modern realities. I think the world has moved on with technology and everything. When this Act of Parliament was done, we don't even have GSM in Nigeria and all that. So, and then of course, like Abbas pointed out, the number of chartered accountants in Nigeria were probably less than 100. And then those in existence were not up to 1,000. But today we are talking about over 50, 70,000 applicants are waiting to join ICANN. So we must bring the existing act in line with modern realities. So I will put the question. Those in favor that this bill be now read a second time, say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. The clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to amend the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria ICANN Act and for other matters connected therewith 2024, SB 265, second reading.
Distinguished colleagues, a bill for an act to amend the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria ICANN Act and for other matters connected therewith 2024, second reading taken. The bill is now referred to the Committee on Establishment and Public Service Matters to report back to the Senate in 3 weeks. The Leader of the Senate.
Mr. Senate President, distinguished colleagues, the second order of the day, the second reading of the Documentation and Protection of Domestic Workers and Employees Bill 2024, SB 270. The distinguished senator will recall that the bill was read the first time in this chamber on Tuesday, 21st November 2023. Mr. President, you may wish to invite Senator Hussaini Babangida Uba to move the motion for the bill to be read a second time.
Distinguished Senator Hussaini Babangida Uba.
Thank you very much, the President of the Senate, distinguished colleagues. Good afternoon. I'm Babangida Hussaini, representing Jigawa Northwest. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, permit me to lead the debate on this very crucial bill for an act to provide for the documentation and protection of domestic workers and employers of domestic workers in the Federal Republic of Nigeria by the Federal Ministry of Labor, Employment, and for other matters. The bill was first read the first time on the floor of the Senate on Tuesday, 21st November 2023. Mr. President, over the years, our nation has experienced an increase in the incidence of assaults and abuse of domestic workers by their employers or hosts. These abuses ranges from slave labor, physical abuse, and sexual abuse, to mention a few. The stories are gory, traumatic, and mind-boggling, especially against the background that these domestic workers exist in the informal sector. They are unionists and they do not have a collective platform to speak for themselves, and therefore remain ostensibly vulnerable and helpless. On the other side of the coin is the rise in the state of complicity of crimes committed by domestic workers, mostly in connivance with other criminal elements of society against their employers or hosts. This border on burglary, kidnapping, stealing of children, and sometimes outright murder. Permit me, Mr. President, to refer this chamber to a very sad incident that happened in Lagos in 1998 to one of the finest female pilots of Nigeria Airways, Hadiza Obo, who was murdered by her domestic staff, and up till today, because the domestic staff have not been documented, up till today they have not been found. Due to urbanization, fast-growing cities with chaotic traffic situation in Nigeria, such as Port Harcourt, Lagos, Abuja, Kano, and other cities, have put significant pressure on working-class parents of different categories of the society, compelling many of them to spend more time at workplaces and far less time at home. The concomitant effect of this is that many families, from the low, middle level to the high income class families, have come to the inevitable reality of the necessity of employing and relying on domestic workers to attend to their needs at home. It is saddening to note that a very vulnerable group of this category of domestic workers have been consistently played upon by their employers or hosts. These are mostly housemaids, houseboys, wards, and extended family members. Mr. President, a lot of these workers are unregistered and not supported by most national labor laws. They work for private households, usually without clear terms of employment, particularly in our country. The Labor Act, in Section 65, states that the minister may make regulations providing for 1. Engagement, repatriation, or supervision of domestic servants; 2. The employment of women and domestic servants; 3. The housing, accommodation, and sanitary arrangement of domestic servants; and finally, the domestic the condition of domestic service generally. Unfortunately, Nigeria is yet to have a codified legislation that provides for the right of domestic workers. Let me use this opportunity to state that this bill is a clear collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Labour. There are also international efforts to address the deplorable working conditions, exploitations, and human rights abuses that domestic workers have to contend with, as well as the lack of legal protection, which makes it difficult for them to seek legal remedies. The International Labour Organization (ILO) came up with the Domestic Workers Convention 2011, number 189. This groundbreaking treaty established the first global standards for domestic workers. The new standards encourage governments to protect domestic workers from violence and abuse, to regulate private employment agencies that recruit and employ domestic workers, and to prevent child labor in domestic work. Since that convention, many other countries are undertaking legislative reforms to bring their laws into compliance with the agreed international standards. This bill does not only seek to protect domestic workers, it will also protect the employers of domestic workers. Investigations have also shown that a significant percentage of gory crimes, such as kidnapping, armed robbery, murder, and highway robbery, have been traced to the connivance of domestic workers of their victims. In the light of the composite security challenges we face today as a nation, it is therefore imperative and critical for this 10th Senate to urgently assist the law enforcement agencies with potent legislations and legislative interventions such as this very critical bill. It is noteworthy that in our country today, several Nigerians, in the name of domestic help and other domestic work, are virtually slaves in our country, and there is no law, no measure of government to protect these Nigerians. This bill will also reduce and deter the propensity of domestic workers' connivance with criminal elements against their employers by maintaining full biometric data and other relevant background information of domestic workers nationwide. Secondly, it seeks to keep track of migration of domestic workers from other countries, from state to state, and from one employer to another employer for security purposes. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, permit me to respectfully draw your attention to the mandate of the Federal Ministry of Labour and Employment, which include the provision of labour protection services, supervision, enforcement, education, promotion of social justice, ratification, implementation and review of national labor laws and policies, including collective bargaining agreements. I want to say that that whether we admit it or not, our country today is actually resting on the shoulder economically of unregistered, undocumented, and unprotected Nigerians who are slaving away at the bottom of the totem pole of our country, unrecognized, unprotected, and of course, mostly unrewarded. In line with Order 76, subsection 3 of our standing orders, the financial compendium for the establishment of this commission is hereby attached. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, in view of the enormous benefits of this bill, which has been elaborately deliberated in this debate, all of you know one house girl, mechanic, driver, somebody somewhere who needs your help in this chamber. I want to urge you to support the second reading of this bill. Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Senator Zam. The Senate President, distinguished colleagues, Senator Titus Start and Gizam. I represent the good people of Benue Northwest Senatorial District. Mr. President, I rise to support this lead debate that canvasses a piece of law to protect our domestic workers. This is a two-barrel piece of legislation. It seeks to protect our domestic staff as well as we, the employers of SEM. I think time has come actually for this country to put in place specific laws to safeguard whoever is engaged. We must have specific terms of engagement so that cases of infraction can be actually dealt with in a manner that all parties involved can have justice. So I don't think there is so much to say, but to agree that yes, there is need for us to support this bill and make sure that both we, the employers of domestic workers, as well as the workers themselves, should have proper access to justice and to have some manner of law that they can make reference to in order to measure the kind of treatment that they will be receiving from their employers and the quality of service that they too will need to give to those that have employed them. When the law is passed, you can now have something to make reference to so that cases of infractions can be easily dealt with. I so support, and I thank my colleague for coming handy with this piece of bill for our attention. Thank you, Mr. Senate President. Yes, Senator Sani.
Thank you, Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues. I think this is one very important bill because that sector, as we see it, it's a large sector. We have domestic staffs everywhere, both at home, farms, almost everywhere you see them, and it is unregulated in this country. If you go to other countries, like the United Kingdom today, you cannot just bring in somebody and say it's your domestic worker without going through the right agency that is empowered to employ one for you. I mean, to give you one. So if we can, as a Senate or as a National Assembly, if we can regulate this, it will also reduce all these cases where you see employers refusing to give the rights that's supposed to be given to these domestic workers. And their fundamental rights are always abused. So I think there will be need for us to look at it based on this bill and regulate it. Impose necessary fines, impose necessary punishment for any abuse. And in line with that, at least from being domestic staff, you'll be able to know that you have your own rights as a citizen of this country. So I so submit, and I believe that my colleagues will also support this bill to go for the second reading. Thank you, Mr. President.
Distinguished Senator Oshomole.
Thank you, Mr. President. With your permission, I'd like to express my appreciation to my brother, distinguished Senator Babangida, who have retired as a PABSEC and rightly be described as a bourgeois employer. To have such a rich social conscience and to recognize that the weakest in our midst deserve to be protected. Mr. President, the primary purpose of government, and in particular of lawmaking, is to protect the weak from the awesome powers of the powerful, whether politically powerful or economically powerful, to protect the weak from misuse of such powers. The lead speaker on this motion spoke very well and very comprehensively, and he drew our attention to the fact that when the rich misuse their powers, the powerless deserve ways and means to retaliate. The way they respond may not be something that is approvable by society, but in the absence of any legal protection, they have to take laws into their hands. Worldwide, it is recognized, and it is captured in the lead debate, that governments have a duty to protect individuals who are employed for domestic purposes. And for clarity purpose, this should not include farm workers. Farm workers should be protected under the minimum wage law. They shouldn't be treated as house helps. I think, sir, that whereas it is easy to point at the number of people who may have been victims of burglary or murder by their house help, it is almost impossible to imagine the number of Nigerians and non-Nigerians in Nigeria who have been abused, sexually harassed, and brutalized by individual employers in homes, and they have the country have no record of their existence. I think it makes sense in the enlightened interest of all those who employ domestic staff as provided for in the law to ensure that these are documented. We all, one way or the other, myself inclusive, there was a time I employed people, I call them security guards. And I have no idea where they come from. And season after season, they just inform me they are bringing their brother to replace them. They go back to farm, and then they come back. Until we began to witness some security challenges arising from the behavior of some of our domestic staff. Some of us employ security people that we don't even know. So I think this is to assist us to think again, and in fact to compel everyone to ensure that when you do employ, that it is documented, and that the Ministry of Labor has responsibility to document, to publish, and to monitor what goes on. The other aspect, which I'm not sure is properly captured in the law, but I think in the course of dealing with the Minimum Wage Act, we might need to deal with that section. The issue of appropriate remuneration. Because sometimes some people pay starvation wages. Slavery has been outlawed in Nigeria. When you pay a wage that doesn't meet the minimum need of a person, and because of economic circumstances he has no choice, it tantamount to slavery. In some part of the world, if you employ your niece, your nephew, or anybody as a domestic help, and you pay less than the legal minimum wage, that act is classified as slavery and is punishable. Nigeria has since outlawed slavery right from time. So I urge my distinguished colleagues to recognize that this is not something we should really argue about. It makes sense. It is in our enlightened self-interest. I am not pretending that I do not also have. When I see the car park, I see a lot of drivers there, and they are all captured here. If you were to ask questions about their remunerations, about their terms and conditions of employment, Mr. Senate President, I'm sure you will be scandalized. Many of us will be scandalized. So I think we need this law to protect ourselves, to help us to behave more responsibly, and also to protect these people who, as a result of the huge level of unemployment, more and more people simply have no right but to take it, as they will say, God did. And when they get to a point that they get so frustrated Then they resort to those practices that I believe the lead speaker spoke to very eloquently. I rise to support this motion, and I want to thank you for the privilege of allowing me to speak to it. Thank you, sir.
Distinguished Senator Johanna Amos.
Thank you, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues. I am Amos Johanna, Adamawa North. Mr. President, the 16th President of the United States of America, Abraham Lincoln, once said that God must care for the poor because he made them many. In this case, this parliament must care for the poor, for the vulnerable, because they are actually the majority in our midst. And so, without dragging the debate, I just want to support and actually lend my voice that this bill be read the second time, because we are doing something that is moral, that is justifiable, and that is timely. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Distinguished Senator Idiat. Senator Amos Johanna.
Your Excellency, the Senate President, distinguished colleagues, my name is Idiat Oluoti Adebule. I rise in support of this bill because of my conviction that we must go this route, particularly when this bill aims to protect domestic workers and, of course, those of us who are employing them. However, I have a question. When distinguished Senator Babangida, the mover of this bill, let me commend you for taking this initiative and for putting this forward. However, I'm a little bit not too comfortable with the idea of having a commission for this purpose. Yes, it is the responsibility of the Ministry of Labor and Productivity to look at the issue of domestic workers and the rest of things like this, which is why we are in collaboration with them by bringing this forward, by jointly bringing this forward. I want to suggest that this can be a directorate, this can be a department in the Ministry of Labor and Productivity, rather than having a commission, a whole commission to take care of this issue. As important as it is, and as it affects each and every one of us, Senator Shomole just made emphasis to the fact that we all have drivers outside waiting there, and that we are probed about their times of engagement. All of us will be taken aback, yes, for some of the drivers. And for all that heads that we may have. But I want to suggest that we look at the issue, the idea of having a directorate or a department in the Ministry of Labor and Productivity to take care of this assignment. Thank you.
Distinguished Senator Ekong Samson.
To the content of this bill. My name is Ekong Samson, Akwebom South. This bill will enrich the content and context of labor laws in this country. It will give depth to the voiceless. It will streamline the layers of rights, not just for the workers, but for employers as well. It will align what we're having in Nigeria with global best practices. It is indeed a very commendable intervention. I think we've reached a tapestry in this country that we have to look at various layers of human rights. And there is no better way to look at the layers of human rights than as much as looking at the layers of rights as relates to the worker. The worker is a very important contributor to our economy and indeed to social inclusion and cohesion in this country. So no measure would be too small aimed at addressing the needs and concerns of workers. One commendable feature of the bill is the protection that it offers as well to the employer. We live in times of major challenges in respect of security, and some of the infractions have been traced to how we relate with our workers. Some of the infractions have been traced to how we treat our workers. So if a measure is taken to give fillip to the rights of workers, I think that should be encouraged. To this extent, I support the content of this bill. I think it is timely. It will redefine, in some broad context, the compass of labor laws in this country. It will give our workers a pride of place, and it will help in further streamlining roles and responsibilities. We have to rise in support of the millions in our midst who are underprivileged, who do not have access to what others have. We need to provide protection for them. There are so many. I know that we take steps daily to intervene to address their needs. But here is one intervention brought in matrix, quite comprehensive in scope, that will help to streamline layers of responsibility, that will help to give succor to our workers while at the same time protecting the employers, as it were. So, on behalf of Kwabom South, I support this bill, and I trust it will go a long way in addressing the concerns that we have daily. I thank you.
Let me thank all the distinguished colleagues who have contributed to the debate, and probably just ask distinguished Senator Simon Nalong, who has just finished as Minister of Labour. It's a very relevant section to close this debate for us.
Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, I'm Simon Lalong, representing the good people of Plateau South. Mr. President, let me first thank the presenter, my brother, distinguished Senator Babangida, for this bill. It is very, very timely and appropriate. A few months ago, I was the Minister for Labor and Employment. And a few months, I represented the President at the International Labour Organization in Geneva. Part of the focus of deliberations were not only on the rights of workers, but on the rights for decent work.
Point of order.
Mr. Senate President, I wish to move that we extend beyond time to be able to contain some items in the order of the day.
Minority Leader, take a look at the mood of the Senate, but go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, I wish to second the motion that the Senate extends the time beyond 2 o'clock to enable the Senate to conclude on some items in the order paper. I so second.
Distinguished colleagues, the motion has been moved and seconded that we do extend time beyond 2 o'clock to enable us to conclude all the other items on the other paper. Those in support of the extension say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Yes, Senator Lalong.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I was saying that I presented the President and also the focus of an emphasis of that discussion by International Labour Organization was on the right of work, right to go on strike, and specifically the right to a decent job. Now, if you go to Ministry for Labour, you will find that there is a need for domestication of especially this issue of decent job. And that decent job covers especially part of what my brother is talking about today. But there is a need for legislation because the legislation is for those downtrodden, like Comrade will say. We all need domestic staff, but sometimes we forget that they are human beings. Sometimes we neglect them, we think that our children are more than them. I've had a case when I was a minister where a domestic staff was trained by the employer. The domestic staff was put in school. She went to school, made a distinction, came back, went to university and made first class. Now, when she came back, she was the one taking care of the family, not even the children. So there is a need to see them as human beings. And this bill is timely. But I will also agree that there is need for us to align it with the ministry, federal. I know what is there, Federal Ministry of Labor, on issues like this, to align it with the Federal Ministry of Labor and Employment, rather than creating a commission. So I agree with my sister, distinguished Senator Idiat, that let's look at it carefully and also with accelerated hearing so that the downtrodden will also start benefiting from some of the aspects of this national assignment. I so move. Thank you, Mr. President.
I think I must thank you for your submission. Already when Senator Idia pointed out that it could be a directorate in the Ministry of Labor and Productivity, I think she was right. Creating a commission for domestic staff because they transit from being domestic staff into being managers of the economy. So there's no need to create a commission, but that will depend on your public hearing and the outcome. Dismissed Deputy Senate President, DSP, close the debate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I feel duty bound to stand to support this bill and also commend the sponsor for a job well done, for his foresight and the fact that we feel that there should be orderliness because as we speak, there isn't orderliness in the way and manner we engage domestic staff, and it's always a problem for both sides. For each side, there's always a problem because we always hear about the maltreatment being done to these domestic staff. Their rights are not protected. They go all through sort of things that are quite inhuman. Well, but you have some employers that are good people, take care of them like their children and like their brothers and sisters. We have such situations. But then there's a need for documentation. Let's know what is in there. If we have this kind of arrangement, that will bring protection not only to the domestic staff themselves, even to the employers. Because we have situations where some domestic staff harm their employers, even kill them. Kill them. Why? Because there isn't any proper documentation to know what's going on. The maltreatment goes on because nobody calls you to account for what you've done. Nobody even knows what is doing. I mean, what is happening. And so you have this situation where these people are maltreated. And right on the other side, because the employee, the domestic staff feels nobody knows him, because sometimes you don't even know these people, they go on to kill their employers. So for both sides, when you have this bill passed into law, well, of course, when you go to the second stage of this processing, then the issue of whether it's going to be a directorate or commission can then be uh, looked at, and we have the best arrangement that will take care of the situation. But then it's a good thing to happen. We should all give our support, because what this bill is seeking to do is in line with international best practice. We know about domestic workers and other employees that have been, uh, you know, they've been taken to other countries, like in the Philippines, in, you know, in so many countries. You have proper documentation. We see them on TV. Before you move to go out of your country or go to work with another person, you need to have go through series of documentation. You need to be your fingerprints, your whatever, everything that needs to be taken must be taken. So, Mr. President, I join you to commend the sponsor of this bill for it. Well done, and then we allow you to go to the next stage of processing, and then we now sit and through committee engagement with the relevant stakeholders, we find out the appropriate body to handle it. It could be the director you are talking about, the court cost. I agree with you. And you're talking about downsizing our institution to cut costs. So in that respect, what you said is correct. But the important thing is that we'll now bring in sanity into this kind of arrangement. I say something, Mr. President.
Thank you, Deputy Senate President. Distinguished colleagues, let me, on your behalf, thank distinguished Senator Babangida for bringing this bill. I think it's very popular. There's nobody that is opposed to it. It's a win-win situation. It will help the domestic staff to get their right remunerations. It will also help the employers to ensure that the people, the resumes are known, because many people don't even know those who are working for them in their houses. Some of them don't even know the names of their men. And it will also assist the country in terms of security, because it's a risk to bring people from Cotonou, Benin Republic, other places to work in your homes. It's a risk to your family, it's a risk to your children. And we've had a lot of incidents of this nature, where sometimes we go to work, we come back and the house is empty. And we've also had few incidents where even the employers have been killed by domestic servants, and they sit back inside there and sell the television, sell things and all that. We've had those incidents. I recall one of the female pilots in our country suffered that fate and was unfortunately murdered by the domestic staff. And in the course of selling properties, the domestic staff was caught. So if with proper documentation, fingerprinting, and all that, it will be easy to identify, and they will also be cautious, knowing that they will be found if they commit any atrocity. So this is a very good bill, and members have commended you. I just don't want to join others to commend you. So having concluded the debates on the general principles, may I now put the question? Those in favor that this bill be down read a second time, say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. The clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to provide for the documentation and protection of domestic workers and employees and for other matters connected therewith, 2024, SB 272, second reading.
Distinguished colleagues, a bill for an act to provide for the documentation and protection of domestic workers and employees and for other matters connected therewith, 2024, SB 272, second reading taken. This bill is now referred to the Senate Committee on Labor and Productivity to report back to the Senate in 4 weeks. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. Senate President, distinguished colleagues, the third order of the day is the second reading of National Eye Center, DOMA, Establishment Bill 2024, SB 193. Distinguished senators will recall that the bill was read for the first time in this chamber on Wednesday, 4th October 2023. Mr. President, you may wish to invite Senator Onawo Mohammed Ogoshi to move the motion for the bill to be read a second time.
Senator Onawo.
Thank you, Mr. President, for this opportunity. My name is Senator Mohammed Ogoshi Onawo, representing the good people of Nasarawa South. With your permission, sir, I would want to lead the debate on a bill for an act to establish a National Eye Center Doma, Nasarawa State, SB 193. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, permit me to lead the debate on the general principles of this important bill for an act to establish the National Eye Center Doma in Doma local government of Nasarawa State. The bill was read for the first time in this hallowed chamber on the 7th of November 2023. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, this bill seeks to establish the National Eye Center Doma. Mr. President, sir, and distinguished colleagues, as we all know, cataract is one of the commonest causes of severe visual impairment and blindness in our country. Similarly, glaucoma has led to several cases of blindness in Nasarawa State and the country at large. Hence, the need to establish more national eye centers anywhere in Nigeria cannot be overemphasized. Trachoma is an infectious eye disease caused by the Chlamydia trachomatis bacteria. It is spread by direct contact with the eye or nose of an infected person, which causes inflammation of the eyelids and can lead to scarring of the cornea. And this is one of the eye diseases commonly found among rural dwellers in Nigeria. And Doma, as well as other communities of Nasarawa State, is not an exception. This, in addition to other conditions like uncorrected refractive errors, are found to be among major causes of blindness and visual impairment in Nigeria. The objective of this bill is for prevention, diagnosis, and treatment of eye, coordination of research in eye diseases, and training of specialists in eye diseases, among others. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the National Eye Center DOMA, when established, will help to prevent and treat eye diseases. The center will enhance and train more eye care providers and professionals alike. The center will promote research and innovations in the field of eye care for Nasarawa State and the country. In, in the overall analysis, the center, when fully established, will create jobs and boost local economy, which will have direct effect on the national economy. Mr. President, sir, the enactment of this bill will not only serve Nasarawa State, but the adjoining states of Benue, Plateau, Taraba, Kogi, the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, and some states of southeastern Nigeria and the country as a whole. Mr. President, we wish to note that currently, anybody with any eye challenge or eye challenges in the aforementioned states will have to travel all the way to Kaduna for treatment. This is very challenging for most people in view of the current economic and security challenges bedeviling the country. In line with Order 76, Sub 3 of our standing orders, the financial compendium for the establishment of this center is hereby attached. I therefore urge my colleagues to please support this bill for the second reading to prevent more of our people from getting blind. Thank you, Mr. President.
Distinguished Senator Engineer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to support this bill because of its importance. My name is Engineer Teleteze. I represent Ebonyi Central Senatorial District. Mr. President, this bill is very important because of the rising cases of blindness and eye problem. And in most cases, these are avoidable blindness. But because of inability to access special centers that will attend to their problem, they are incapacitated and are unable to seek for medical care. So this bill is very important because it borders on our health and our performance. Because once you're blind, you are incapacitated and you're already removed from the economy and the contribution to the nation. So I support this bill to go for second reading because of its importance. Thank you, Mr. President.
Distinguished colleagues, I can see that everybody is in tune and alliance with the bill, and there is no single person opposed to it. So I want to thank distinguished Senator Eze and also thank our brother Anawo for bringing this bill to the fore. And we should further add to the care that we have for our citizens. So, distinguished colleagues, I'll put the question. Those in favor that this bill be now read a second time, say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. The clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to establish National Eye Center, Doma, Nasarawa State, and for other matters connected therewith 2024, SB 193, second reading.
Distinguished colleagues, a bill for an act to establish the National Eye Center, Doma, Nasarawa State, and for other matters connected therewith 2024 SB 193. Second reading taken. This bill is now referred to the Committee on Health to report back to the Senate in 3 weeks.
Mr. President, point of order. Point of order. Point of order.
Yes, Senator Danderson.
And my respected colleagues, I'm Senator Andus Muntar Mohamed, representing Katsina South. I am coming under Order 42. Personal explanation. Mr. President, by the indulgence of the Senate and the leave of the President of the Senate, a senator may make a personal explanation, although there be no question before the Senate, but no controversial matter may be brought forward, nor may the debate arise upon the explanation. The terms of the proposed statement shall be submitted in detail to the President of the Senate when he leaves to make it so. Mr. President, my respected colleagues, very unfortunately and sad, in my senatorial district, under less than a month, more than 130 people were killed. In Ankara local government alone, we have 42 people killed and a major. In Sabwa local government, we have 22 people were killed just 2 days. And even today, we have 17 people killed in Malumfashi local government. And in Paskari local government, a captain was killed and 2 military personnel were also killed in less than a month. Apart from abduction of people, even a member of State Assembly, Senior Brother, was abducted and kidnapped, and his family, and a prominent businessman in Paskari local government was also killed in a very unfortunate and sad situation. That is why, Mr. President, I sought the leave of the House to bring this motion in subsequent legislative day. I so submit. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Distinguished Senator Dandusen, your point of order, privilege, and noted. We will bring the motion on the next legislative day. Leader of the Senate. However, it's good to bring attention of the senators to our rules. Senate Standing Orders 2023 as amended. So look at Rule 38. Arrangement of business of the Senate. And be guided.
Mr. Senate President, distinguished colleagues, the fourth order of the day, and probably the last one for today, because we discovered that there are a lot of committee meetings, especially the one on solid mineral resources. I will want to seek the indulgence of Mr. President to allow the Senate, the chamber to close immediately after the fourth order of the day, which is the second reading of Nigerian National Internship and Unemployment Benefit Scheme, Bill 2024,
SB 258. Distinguished senators, you will recall that the bill was read for the first time in this chamber on Tuesday, 14th November 2023. Mr. President, you may wish to invite Senator Salisu Shuaib Afolabi to move the motion for the bill to be read the second time.
Distinguished Senator Afolabi.
Mr. President, distinguished senators of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Shuaib Afolabi Salisu is my name. I have the mandate and honor of representing Ogun Central Senatorial District. I am proudly from Ogun State. Today, distinguished colleagues, I rise to request and solicit your support that a bill that was initially moved on November 2023 to go through the second reading. This bill is not just about me, it's about each and every one of us, and it affects all our constituents, regardless of where you are come from. This bill is on national internship and unemployment benefit scheme. Is there a senator here that is not daily bombarded with requests for employment and will sometimes seem helpless because the number of available jobs far, far less than the number of people seeking employment? Are we not conversant with the narrative, the plight of the Nigerian youth seeking employment? From a case of a hope to a hope dashed, the Nigerian youth will start with all the effort to pass the secondary school certificate. When he crosses that hurdle with a little hope, he goes and attends a tertiary institution, and the hope goes above one notch. He completes that and he goes to NYSC, and he begins to look forward to life after school. I'm going to speak to my paper, but this I'm speaking straight from the heart. The Nigerian youth, he completes the NYSC, and then the whole begins to dim one after the other. We are aware that every year, Nigerian institutions, tertiary institutions, admit close to 2 million intakes, and they graduate about 600,000 every now and then. As we speak, more than 35% of the Nigerian youth are unemployed. Sometimes it depends on the statistics you are looking at. But one thing that is clear is this: there's no senator here who hasn't got unemployed youth in his family. There's no senator here that his constituents are not asking for employment. If you cannot even provide them employment, what can we do in the interim? So this bill seeks to do three things. Three things are the core of this bill. Number one is to have a database of the unemployed youth. As they say, if you cannot measure it, you cannot manage it. So the first thing is to have a database of the unemployed youth. Those with certificates, we know their degrees, we know their disciplines, we know how long they have been unemployed. The number two thing is this: if someone studies pharmacy, law, computer science, or whatever the discipline, for 2-3 years he hasn't gotten a job, pray, what knowledge of that discipline will he still retain in his head after 2-3 years? And to complicate his matter, even when just become available, they ask him to bring 2-3 years experience. Where will someone who has not got an opportunity to work come with a 2-3 years experience? So the number two thing about this bill is to provide a framework for this unemployed youth that we have captured to have an opportunity to work, even if it's 2-3 days a week, even if they have not gotten a paid employment, a full-time employment, for them to be able to report somewhere for 2-3 days, take them away from the street, give them some hope, let them begin to gain experience while they are still seeking for full-time employment. Number three, while you are doing so, you just don't want to dole out money to them, you also want to give them unemployment benefit, meaning that an unemployed youth with a certificate, he leaves home in the morning, 3 days a week,
he gets some stipend, he has a hope, he's holding his skills, he's getting experience, he's in the job market. Besides, we're also able to measure the number of those youth. What are the benefits? The benefits are immense. We spend so much money on insecurity. But how much money can you spend on security providing armament when the 70% of your population are unemployed, when these youth have the skills and experiences? I am aware as the chairman of Senate Committee on ICT and Cyber Security that there are even Yahoo schools where our youth are enrolled simply because they haven't gotten an opportunity to use their skills somewhere else. We will be tackling security. The number two thing is that this national asset, the investment of their parents and of the nation on them will begin to tap into them by providing them a place to begin to use this talent. I'll give you a few examples. As we speak, the federal government is constructing Lagos-Calabar Road. What is wrong in having some of our unemployed engineering graduates to have them to be interns on this construction from kilometer 1 to kilometer 10? These youths go and learn 3 days a week. You are supervising, you are gaining experience, you are being paid some stipends. The Small and Medium Scale Enterprise Development Agency, they are trying to nurture small and medium scale enterprises. But these SMEs, they cannot afford to employ accountants full time. But guess what we can do? We can get some of these unemployed youths who are doing interns. We are tied them to some small and medium scale enterprises. They pay them stipend. They are providing services to those people. They are enhancing the development of the economy. Invariably, they are contributing. They are getting some stipend. They are getting experience. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, let me emphasize two things that are very unique about this bill. We are not seeking to create new bureaucracy. It's about streamlining the current bureaucracies. You have National Directorate of Unemployment or Employment. You have the Industrial Training Fund. You have a lot of interventions that have not been properly targeted to the beneficiary. Now that we know the youth that are unemployed, we can target those interventions directly to them. Number two, when you ask for the funding, again, there are already enough funding in the system. The challenge is this, streamlining those funding. And I'd like to conclude this with Mr. President and distinguished colleagues. Distinguished Senator Shaibu. Sorry, Senator, yes, Senator Salabi. You're right, Mr. President. Your lecture is good.
I will round up this way, Mr. President.
But you have to, since you have decided to abandon your lead debate, the paper before us, go to conclusion.
I'll go to conclusion, Mr. President. Everything I've said is in this paper, but this issue is not about paper. It's about speaking from the heart, because I engage these people every day. I will conclude this way. The president of the country has done something very noble. We have come with student loan, meaning that our tertiary institution, their calendar will be more regular. What it does means that we are going to be producing more graduates every year. That is the supply side. Can we take a look at what we can do for the unemployed youth, even when we are still trying to create employment for them? When an American citizen stands up and says, God bless America, it's because he thinks America cares for him. When a British citizen stands up and says, God bless the Queen, God bless the King, it's because he thinks Britain cares for him. Mr. President, let's give something to the Nigerian youth, so that when we say, arise, O compatriots, Nigeria call obey, they will know the deed that the compatriots will care for them. When we are still looking for the job for them, we put them on stipend, we provide them employment, we unleash their talent, and their parents who have sent them to school will also not be bearing the burden of them. Mr. President, arise, and I do hope that you support this bill for this to go to the second reading. It might not have been the most elegantly drafted bill, even the heading may require some tweaking, but the objective remains the same. Give Nigerian youth something, so that when we say arise, of compatriots, they know we care for them. Mr. President, I know you do care, and I know my colleagues do care. Let's translate the renewed hope agenda, Mr. President, into something concrete. I so move.
Distinguished Senator Kabondo.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Austin Akabondo. I represent the Grove School of Aga Center Senatorial District. I rise to support this motion for the simple fact that all of us, as senators and leaders, know the problem of youth unemployment in our various constituencies. In my senatorial district, I have made the issue of youth unemployment a cardinal objective of my legislative activities by ensuring that they will have access to all forms of um, skill acquisition training, whether you are a graduate or not. But going through this bill, I see that it encapsulates every aspect of keeping, all major aspects of keeping these youths busy. And I see a possibility of having an interface between youth service and Ministry of Labor and Employment as a stopgap measure. I think that critically, if we look at this and structure it properly, it will provide answers, to the yearning aspirations of youths who are on the streets without job. The issue of training and skills come to mind easily. I applaud the sponsor. I also applaud the content. Everything is well structured and encapsulated in this bill. And in doing so, I support this motion. Thank you, Mr. President, for giving me the opportunity.
Senator Naida.
Thank you, Mr. President. Respected colleagues, for the opportunity to speak on this subject matter. It's very important to all of us, as the lead debater said in his lead debate. And it says so very passionately. Unemployment is the big issue here in our country. And there has been so many ways that we all have been looking at it for how we can address it. It's very important because it also is also tied in with the issue of insecurity. And idle hand, as they say, is the devil's shop. Internship and membership and mentorship go hand in hand. And so for a young graduate who have done well in school, has no job, stays at home, does nothing, nowhere to go, it's very difficult to control such an individual. But this bill, when passed, because I believe all of us will support this passage, will create an avenue for them to be fully engaged. Like the Muslim have rightly said, these engineers and contractors who construct our buildings and our roads, getting further naira and so forth, can as well look for a way to bring in these young engineers and what have you, to learn on the job so that they themselves can become an asset to the country. So this bill, as far as we're concerned, and I'm sure we all have the same view, is fully supported, and we pray that when it comes to a good bill, that we all will support it in its entirety. Thank you, Mr. President, for the opportunity.
Distinguished Senator Pedro Sane Abubakar.
Sorry, my colleague here was giving me some very vital information. Yes, Mr. President. And I saw you looking at me, so I knew to call me. I was signaling him to stop his intervention, but he wasn't seeing you, of course. What can I do for you, sir?
I noticed you wanted to contribute to the bill.
I did raise my hand, sir.
I noticed you wanted to contribute to the bill on the unemployment situation, but
no, I mean,
because Senator was there disturbing you, I needed to separate from.
Mr. President, I'm in full support of the bill.
Exactly.
Yes, I read it very well. Up 100% support, Mr. President.
Noted, noted. So, distinguished colleagues, Senator Warala, you want to say something?
Thank you very much, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. I remain Senator Ahmed Wadada Ali Sarkiat Kefi. I represent Nasarawa West Senatorial District. This is, of course, a very important bill because the issue contained in the literature of the bill is, of course, of tumultuous importance and relevance to us as people's representatives. But, Mr. President, as much as I align myself to this bill based on its importance, Mr. President, we should, for obvious reasons of what are on ground already, avoid continuous passage of bills that will lead to creations. The emphasis should at all times be that government should do all it should at all times to create that needed and required enabling environment for the private sector to thrive. Everywhere in the world, the private sector is the main driver of economic growth and development. If, as the bill seeks or requires, internship and scheme appreciation center is created, that may not, at the end of the day, provide the needed and required solution to unemployment. But when the environment is enabling in all ramifications, of course, you can imagine if you put the entire workforce of the Nigerian banks, they are not up to the workforce of Dangote Group. So if the environment is enabling enough to have 5 Dangotes or 10, 20 Dangotes, I mean, employment will not be as much, needed as it is today. Minimally, the rate of unemployment will be reduced to the barest minimum. So I commend and congratulate my colleague, but the emphasis at all times from us to the government or to the side of the executive is that the needed environment, enabling environment should be created. And that will go a long way in alleviating the unemployment and so many other issues that we have in the system. I so submit or contribute, Mr. President.
Distinguished Senator Eze, off your mic.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise because of the importance of this bill before us, and that everybody is involved. And having listened to the last speaker, I'm just happy that you called me to speak. And to say the least is that it is a pathetic situation that we have in our hand in Nigeria, especially unemployment and intention. And everybody is involved. I go to my constituency, and the level of barrage of demand, Senator, can you get us into? That some of our youth are developing psychological problems. Some of our youth are so impoverished. People that have struggled from very poor background to gain education and to have first class. I know is the president of a child that had graduated with first class and has stayed up to 10 years, wandering without a job. And unfortunately, his age has made him unemployable and has no means of livelihood. It's so pathetic. So we have an emergency situation in our hand. Looking at this bill, it's not something we are going to suspend or postpone until the enabling environment is there. If we can provide NYC scheme for the long run, it can still be extended to cover this unemployment skill and internship. You talk about young graduates that need bed intention, especially medical students. Some stay up to 2, 3 years waiting for vacant in medical in some hospital to have their intention. So if it is made compulsory, giving a legal framework, made it compulsory that once you graduate, you are sure of intention, it will encourage that. And it will deal with these vices in our society, especially insecurity. Most of these young youth take to crime not because they are willing or they have love to go to crime, but they chose instead of dying of hunger, they will choose to survive by all means because that they are as such. The country owes this youth the duty and the right to give them job. And if they can't provide, they should at least provide a little stipend to sustain their life. I support this bill because it's very important and it needed urgent attention. Thank you, Mr. President.
This is Senator Oshumole, and then we end.
Thank you, Mr. President, for the privilege to speak on this bill. I think there can be no question. We all lament the fact that we have a lot of graduates with paper or without skill. And skills are necessary for two hands to feed one mouth. Otherwise, the hands are there, but they don't have the skill to work, to add value, to create value, to sustain themselves and eventually their family. I think the intention of the bill for me is very, very clear. I don't think we should do it out of pity and out of setting. It's about recognizing those gaps that exist in our educational system and using the force of law to compare. I think we can rework the bill. I'm sure the mover of the distinguished brother Afolabi spoke about whether elegant or inelegant. But I think the bill can benefit from the touch. But the overall purpose, in my view, is to say that after NYC, a young man may have been forced to read a course or to read a course that she didn't want to read, but that is what the university offered. And so we have graduates who parade documents that do not reflect their aptitude. I think the idea of internship is that you may well find that you read mass comm, but you have skill in other areas. And it doesn't require creation of another institution. In my view, there are parts of the world where employers are encouraged to take on young people and expose them to acquiring skills in a modified way of apprenticeship. And just like lawyers do, you finish from law school, you are obliged to do a tutelage with a law firm before you can set up your own practice. Even though in law you can go to court, but the technicality require that you do some internship with an established law firm. I think this is what I understand this bill to be about. But the challenge I have, which the law has to be carefully worded to avoid, is not to have the kind of situation we have with the industrial training fund, where money is deducted ostensibly to ensure that workers are skilled, are trained properly, and the money just goes to the pocket of consultants and the balance books, no new skills are acquired. We have to, in the light of such experiences, word the law in such a way that such practices will attract severe sanction. Lastly, Mr. President, I just discovered only yesterday, and for me, I found it extremely embarrassing. I'm not sure when I should say it, but we should say it because we are in Parliament. But even the National Assembly is not paying corpers the mandatory legal obligation to pay them allowances. That for me is scandalous. And I'm sure, Mr. President, you are not aware of this, that this has been the tradition of previous senators. I will just roll on, not knowing that these coppers we see here are not even paid. And what it means is that the government agency doesn't obey the law. How will private employers obey the law? So I will take advantage of this to say that under your leadership, let it be on record that it was the 10th Senate, under your leadership, a heart that cares, that these young men and women who are serving various committees should be attracting allowances not less than is prescribed in law in terms of minimum wage. But back to this issue, and this is the last point. There are part of the world, sir, in order to keep people busy, they give employers incentive not to sack. Because if they follow the logic of the market, the social purpose of government does not coincide with the profit motive of private enterprise. And so the government tried to use this instrument as using the force of the state to subsidize the employer so that they can retain employees who otherwise the logic of the market may not require. That way you get people busy. The way capitalism has survived and moderated the aggression of communism is that it created this social safety net to give everybody a sense of belonging. People will say we are not yet wrapped, but sir, Mr. President, we are wrapping up because the challenge we have now, when we have market money, traders money, conditional cash transfer, this hard hoc approach to dealing with the poor in our midst is for me not a structured way. I think we need to structure the idea that every Nigerian who lacks job because of our choice of economic policies or the fact that our population is growing much faster than the rate of economic growth, but they deserve to have something at the end of the month. How much it should be will be a matter for another day. It is to be preferred to this ad hoc cash transfer that you can't control. It's ad hoc by nature, it's not structured, and as we have seen, accountability is a big issue. I urge my colleagues to give their support to this bill. I think it is in national interest and our own elected self-interest. Thank you, Mr. President, for this privilege.
Thank you, distinguished colleagues, for your contributions. And I must especially thank my brother, the civil senator Labe, for bringing this bill. And all the contributions are in favor. There's no single person that is opposed to it. The only thing will be the drafting of the bill will have to be much more elegant. And I think that can be done at subsequent stages through your public hearings and when you get into the issue of the proper drafting of the bill. Initially, from the title, the short title, even when you are talking about national internship, I got very interested. Because so many children are meeting me and saying that they finished the American colleges after 7 years, 3 years ago. They've not been able to do internship. I feel that should have been automatic. So when you allow a graduate of medicine to stay at home for 2, 3 years, but without practicing, by the time you bring the person into a theater, it's a recipe for disaster. So you can see why we have so many medical surgery errors that are buried underground. Right on like the architects' mistakes that are there for all to see. They are lucky that they are not buried underground. So we can stop all that if we had something like this. And we will make it compulsory. And also the aspect of unemployment benefit scheme is what this administration of President Bola Tinubu is trying to do to ensure that it brings the social safety net to capture that segment of the population. Totally in line with the renewable agenda of this current administration. And even me, as a person, I have also promised that I will join the president to work hard to turn boys into men. We can't turn starving boys into starved men. And there will be a danger to the society. So the unemployment thing is something that all and sundry must look for everywhere to upload it. And the society and states, including the government, must do everything possible to capture that segment. And that will give strength and give hope and make them happy. Like somebody said, when they are singing the national anthem, they will place their hands in their heart because of the love of the country and for what the country has done for them. So I thank you all for your contributions, and I said this is a very important bill and it's in line with the hope of Mr. President to turn things around for the unemployed youth of the country and to cater for that population that will eventually inherit the future. So can I now put the question? Those in support that this bill be now read a second time, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to establish the National Internship and Unemployment Benefit Scheme and for other matters connected therewith 2024, SB 258, second reading.
Distinguished colleagues, a bill for an act to establish the National Internship and Unemployment Benefit Scheme and for other matters connected therewith 2024, SB 258, second reading taken. This bill is now communicated to the Committee on Labor and Productivity to report back in 4 weeks. Leader of the Senate.
Senate President, distinguished colleague, looking at the right move of the Senate and having gone very far in execution of our orders, I move the motion that we suspend all other items to the next legislative day. I so moved.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I second the motion that in view of the mood of the Senate, that we suspend all other items on the other paper in the next legislative day. I so second.
Distinguished colleagues, a motion has been moved and seconded that the remaining items on the order paper be moved to the next legislative day. Those in support of this motion say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Let me announce very briefly that the investigative hearing on solid minerals continues today at hearing room 231. It will be today and tomorrow. So the colleagues are advised immediately after this plenary to move forward to go and attend. Accordingly, this Senate stands adjourned to the 9th day of May 2024 at 11 a.m. prompt.